Hello, welcome to Quackalope, thank you for being here. Today we're talking about Dead by Daylight, the board game coming from Level 99 Games. Now, if you're not familiar with Dead by Daylight, the video game, let me give you a brief synopsis of what's happening. You're survivors in this arena being hunted by a giant evil villain of some sorts, whether it's a machination, a spirit, a butcher, any of those horror movie tropes, and he's doing his best to capture you and hang you up on a hook. Now, throughout the course of the game, the video game that is, you'll be diving, dodging, hiding in barrels, and fixing generators to open up a series of locked doors and finally find your escape. Or not, and the butcher will sacrifice you to their dark ritual, and they will, well, win by bringing to life some sort of atrocity. At least that's as far as I assume. The board game is going to be an abstract version of that. This is going to be a one versus many game where one player controls any number of your villains or killers, and a set of 2 all the way up to 4 players control various different characters running around the board here. It's a combination hidden movement game, meaning both players are acting, trying to predict what the other players are going to be doing, and there is open communication, but you have to be careful because anything you say, the killer might interpret, hear, and be able to predict. Survivors are going to be moving around the board, doing just what you do in the video game, fixing generators to unlock an exit and escape. The killer is going to be hunting them down using special powers and abilities, tracking them with multiple movements in a single turn, grabbing them, and hanging them up on a hook, as long as they've been injured, of course. So, this is Dead by Daylight. I'm going to go into detail in this video on how it plays, what the functionality is, and then also my overall experience with the game, letting you know kind of the way that this takes the video game and brings it here onto the table. And I think they really have done that. Now, I know some IPs might have went with heavy theme, artwork, and stylized components, but honestly here, this is approachable, simple, and as far as I'm concerned, actually does a really solid job at taking what that video game is doing and bringing it into a tabletop experience. It's the overarching powers, it's the abilities, it's the simultaneous hidden movement, it's the dodging and ducking and constant threat that this creature will be able to track you down and hunt you. If you're new here, I know a lot of people are backing Dead by Daylight because they're fans of the video game. Welcome to Quackalope. We cover board games of all sorts and sizes, and there's an entire world of video games transferring over into this space. So, if you're a fan of some of the largest video game titles in the industry, stay around, subscribe, I don't know, stick with us. Outside of that, I'm going to give you 2 more reasons why you should 100% subscribe to this channel, other than the fact that it helps what we do here. First and foremost is that I'm going to give away, personally, a full pledge of Dead by Daylight to someone who subscribes and comments their favorite hunter down below. I want to know which one of your killers you're going to play first when you get this game into your hands. And then, secondly, the time I'm going to give away that game, or that pledge, is going to be in correlation with a gameplay that we're producing that should be published this Wednesday or Thursday of this week. So, if a preview isn't enough and you want to see how the game actually functions on the table, stay tuned, because trust me, we're going to be showing that off as well. I think right now the plan is a 3 or 4 player gameplay, because 5 is a lot to squeeze around my table. So, let's talk about Dead by Daylight. Let's talk about the way the game actually flows and functions, and how you go about taking your turns. It's a fairly aggressively simple game when it comes to the core mechanics of it. That being said, every character has their own powers and abilities. Same thing with the killers that are hunting them down. The combination of that and these deck of cards here that allow you to manipulate or change any of those powers and abilities with others as you get more and more experience with the game means that you can customize exactly what combination of unique effects you want to play with your character. Can you break the game by twisting and making it so you can run halfway across the board only to realize that you're not able to heal yourself, or it's really hard for you to interact with items? You just don't have the tokens that you need to do what you needed to do? That's the puzzle here. That's the depth that hardcore board gamers are going to be looking for. There's so many combinations, there's so many pairs, there's so many abilities, and I cannot wait to see everything that ends up coming during the duration of the Kickstarter campaign. With that being said, what's the core premise of Dead by Daylight? Clearly, I have everything laid out a little bit more aesthetically. You'll be playing with 1 hunter, and you'll be playing with 4 characters. So I'll move the trapper over here so you can take a look, and let's go ahead and zoom in on Feng Min, her board here. So, every board is going to have the breakdown of the actions and turns that you can take, the difficulty level of the board itself, indicating, and if you notice a little bit of a glint and shine to the top of my hand here, it's because I spent maybe 3 or 4 hours last night going over these resin miniatures and giving them a wash and a paint, which is not too hard to do, just takes a little bit of dedication. Every character here is going to have how difficult they are to play, a little bit of flavor text establishing who they are, and then the game playing round, which is broken down into 4 phases: planning, survivors, killer, cleanup. Simple as that, rinse and repeat until you complete one of the 2 objectives. The killer is trying to sacrifice enough people onto hooks in order to accomplish or finish whatever their occult practice is. Survivors are trying to fix enough generators around the board to fully repair 4 of them, open up an exit gate, and make their way out of the arena. So, there you have it. Moving down, we also have powers and passive abilities with each one of your killers, along with a set of cost actions. So these are bonus actions that you can take as long as you have these tokens here to activate them. Same thing over here with our survivors. Survivor is going to have a row for item cards, they're going to have blood points, which are those tokens there, and also their own special powers and abilities, some of which cost something, some of which are modifiers, some of which are reactions. And depending on the combination of characters you're playing, this puzzle in the game will change. Along with that, this board is double-sided, so I can flip from this side to another side with different pathways and movement actions. So let's describe the board here. The board is going to be composed of various different locations around the yard. You're going to be moving through these action icons, sometimes following only direct arrow pathways, other times being able to go back and forth. You're going to be interacting with tokens at these locations, things that allow you to hide, search for items, fix generators, or potentially hooks that you're going to be hung on. As you move and explore, you'll flip a token every single time, meaning this board will reveal itself fairly quickly throughout the course of the game. And then you're trying to avoid detection, trying to avoid being wounded by the hunter or the killer, and trying to, well, roll dice to resolve and successfully fix some of the generators. You'll be getting little generator marks as you slowly start to repair them, and once you get up to 3, you'll be able to move that token up here to the top, indicating that you have successfully repaired one of the 4 that you need. This turns into like a helter-skelter, rush, dive, duck, and avoid the chaos happening on the board. Okay, so on your turn, what's going to happen? Let's follow the gameplay pathway here. First is going to be planning. This is where everyone around the table is going to take their set of cards. Everyone is going to have the 4 core movement cards: red, yellow, green, and blue. You'll play one of these cards out of your hands, looking at the pathways that you have, and trying to decide where you think the killer is not going to be. Maneuvering, for instance, down to the foundry ground floor when it's your turn. You'll play these face down, however, because everyone, all 4 core characters, and the hunter will be playing their cards. Now, the hunter, importantly, has 2 changes to this rule. The hunter is going to be able to play 2 cards, and the hunter has a special wait card, meaning he can stay in position and capture anyone that's just moved into his zone, making them a little bit more vulnerable than maybe they would like. Hunter's going to play down 2 of their cards. Survivors are each going to play down 1 of their cards. And if you're controlling multiple survivors because you're doing a lower player count, you're going to only have the same set of 4 cards for the 2 survivors that you're playing with, which means you have to make tactical decisions, and the choice becomes even more difficult. If you want both people to move down green, it's just going to be completely impossible if you're controlling 2 characters. At that point, you're going to go ahead and reveal the survivor's actions. For instance, I revealed sprint here, so I can go ahead and move away from the hunter up into this position. I'll move. When I arrive in a location, I'll flip a token, and then I can interact. I could heal someone, I could interact with a token that's on the board, allowing me to take an extra movement and action, hiding in a box, or trying to fix a generator. Sometimes that'll resolve using some of my special abilities. Sometimes that'll involve taking and placing some tokens down, like barriers, that keep the hunter from being able to follow you. And sometimes that will involve drawing item cards and taking advantage of some of them, like the rainbow map, the first aid kit, or the toolbox. At the start of the game, you're all going to be maneuvering around, trying to identify where the generators are, but also, more and most importantly, trying to just establish some degree of control. You want items, you want resources, you want blood points. And if you don't have those, you're gonna run into a middle game where being chased down and hunted by the butcher here can be pretty brutal. Moving down from there, after all the survivors have acted, flipping a token and taking whatever action they want on their board, you're going to move over to the hunter's phase. The killer is going to flip their cards and resolve them in any order they would like. For instance, let's say I'd predicted better than I did. I could put a green down, maneuvering up. Granted, I'll remove the barrier now. Removing up into the main entrance where two of my victims are. Then I get to take an interaction with that first movement. In this location, I can choose to wound the other survivor, because sometimes it's good to hunt multiple survivors, placing a little blood token underneath them. I can choose to go ahead and grab and place this survivor up onto a hook, because I have one there, giving me a brand new point at the end of the game, driving my blood points up to the point where I might, or my sacrifices up to the point where I might win by the end of the round. And I could choose to interact with any of these tokens. All these tokens will have different conditions. For instance, things like lockers, I can only interact with if someone is hidden in one, but if they are, we make a skill check. If they fail, I destroy the locker, and I get to go ahead and pick them up, which is always fantastic, always fun. I might be wrong about that. I think it's if they succeed, the locker gets destroyed. If they fail, I get to pick them up. Clean and handy, they don't need to be wounded or anything beforehand. After I've taken my first action, I can resolve my second, again in any order, and in this case I have a wait, which means I might grab one of my tokens here and go ahead and look my victim in the eye and wound them in the process. So I'll snap that onto the base, and now I have multiple people that I can potentially sacrifice to the greater good. We're the moral ones in this game. From that point, I laugh maniacally and I go ahead and score one of my blood hook tokens. Now, the way that this escalates is that everyone that is currently on a hook is going to score me a point, meaning if they don't rescue this survivor from this round to the next round, I might be in a position where I'm scoring 2 or 3 hooks at a certain point in the game, making the ramp up really heavy and really steep, and the balance point of when you press for victory, really important. It's really one of the fun, interesting things about the game. It might feel like you're dodging and maneuvering around the hunter for the vast majority of it, but then right when they catch you by the scruff of your neck, suddenly the game shifts. And I think you see that in the video game a lot when you play as well. From that point on, we move over to cleanup phase. Checking for victory points, checking victory point conditions, picking back up your card, because you'll always have all of your cards available to play, resolving any items that you might have played that need to be discarded or swapped out, and checking for any of your sacrifice tokens or your ritual tokens that might need to come off the board. Every hunter has their own abilities, and so some of them will have different conditions than others. And with that, I think that's a preview of Dead by Daylight. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a how to play video, and I'm going to be doing a full gameplay video to give you a better in-depth look at exactly how the game functions and dive into the details a bit more. But really, it's simple, it's approachable, and it's a lot of fun. My core experience so far with Dead by Daylight is that I was initially, not thrilled about the way the game looked. I think it looks a little simple, a little clean, and I wanted that visceral, kind of dark, nightmarish artwork to be brought here onto the table. But as I started diving in, first playing on TTS and then being able to get a copy here in front of me, I actually think it works and functions really well, especially for the audience that it's targeting. You see, if you're a fan of video games and you're backing because you love video games, this game is designed to sing to you. It's simple, accessible, functional, with a lot of depth for you to dive into. Now, if you're a board gamer, like me, that has a collection of something like 500 to 700 board games somewhere scattered throughout my house, you might look at this and want campaign or big grit or giant, Cthulhu-sized miniatures. But I don't think it needs it here. And I don't know that it would improve the gameplay experience if it did have it. You see, one of the cool things about this is the fact that the simultaneous movement makes it so that everything needs to be readable at a glance. I don't want to sit here and struggle with what I'm trying to do or where I'm trying to go. I want to focus on the game, the puzzle that I'm trying to solve, and outwitting the person sitting across the table from me, or the persons if you're playing as one of the hunters. And I think this does that really well. It feels dark and gritty, is horrifying when you accidentally stumble in front of the person who's trying to catch you by the scruff and hang you on a hook. And it really does escalate in a very tight race. Now, it does play 3 to 5 at the moment. I'm curious to see how it might function at 2, just 1 versus 1, but I think you might have to moderate how many cards people have in their hand or how much control they have over their characters. And also, there's a lot of abilities that you have to know, learn, and function, and I'd be skeptical to see exactly how clean all that works together with perfect information. Aside of that, what do I think you will like about this game? Well, for me, the biggest shining point here, the biggest reason why I'd back it is actually very similar to the video game. There's a lot of variation here in the strategy that you take and the abilities that you have, the items and resources that you find, and the killers that you're facing and that are hunting you. There's so much diversity when it comes to the amount of cards, abilities, and cycles that you can play that every round feels different. The puzzle just isn't the same. You have some that are really good at capturing, roping you in, and hanging you on a hook. You have others that might be putting down barriers, locking you into a corner, or preventing you from accomplishing your mission. And then you have situations where they just sit and wait, and they draw you in. And when you move by, all they have to do is reach out a gnarled hand and hook you. So, that's why I would be compelled by this. That's why I currently am compelled by this. The amount of stuff here. The fact that you have an entire arsenal of cards that can customize any one or multiple elements of your board is fantastic. It sets it up so I can create the character that I want to play, survivors that I want to race against, and the challenge that I want to approach. What would I like to see more of? Going forward, I would love to see more exploration in the map itself, possibly even some modularity when it comes to the way the tiles are built out. I'd love to see more hunters with more tactical miniatures on the board, and I wouldn't mind a bit of a reskin when it comes to the background art, as opposed to like the top level stuff. I do think the table presence is good, especially once you get the minis dry brushed and looking shiny, but I will admit I think it could be a touch better. However, at I believe $49 with 6 or 7 minis in the original core box, I'd be hard pressed to challenge the amount of value they've put into this game. So if you're excited, if you're interested, stay tuned for the how to play, stay tuned to the gameplay, and we're going to keep producing content to let you know as much as we can about Dead by Daylight. With that, I'm a duck, and I'll see you in the next video.